Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. And I'm back with our next installment looking at Naoki Urasawa's Monster. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Just a quick catch up. We have kind of seen some background for our antagonist, Johan, and we followed Tenma through several different situations where he has to look at a situation much like the one he's in, but he has to weigh many different variables to it as he tries to figure out what he's going to do. And each of these situations, the decisions he makes in them, are going to eventually have bearing on how he deals with Johan when they meet at the end of the story. But right now, we are in the middle of a brief interlude where we go and we look at some other people. In the last chapter we looked at last time, we saw what was going on with Inspector Lunge as he slowly worked himself out of a normal life into a situation where he was completely alone with nothing to do but hunt for Dr. Tenma. And this is how Lunge essentially becomes this story's Javert. He is pursuing justice as he understands it. He is trying to enforce the law, and he does believe that Tenma is a killer. But his need for something meaningful to do in his life, I think, is going to drive him to pursue Tenma in a way he might not have otherwise. And that is going to play into a theme that I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of this installment. But as it is now, we pick up with Ava. Ava is Tenma's ex. She was the daughter of the hospital director that Tenma was originally engaged to, Dusseldorf. And we get a brief understanding of who she is, where she is, and what she's doing. And what she's doing is not really maintaining her life any better than Inspector Lunge. This chapter just sort of plays into her prickly nature, her tendency to speak very harshly, to be very controlling and domineering. She has a gardener that works for her, that is fond of her, and she tries to build a relationship with him. Problem is, this man has separated from his wife, and at the end of the story, wife returns, and Ava is left out in the cold through no fault of her own. She was building real affection and rapport with this man, but it didn't work out. And that is a crushing blow to Ava's state of mind. And much like Inspector Lunge in the previous section, she rededicates herself to finding Tenma and destroying his life just like she thinks he has destroyed hers. This is not really directly going to have bearing on the story, but it does kind of give us a sense of where all the players are at in their life right now. We saw Lunge and Ava a lot in the opening sequence 8 years ago before Johan and Anna aged up to their current ages. But we really didn't have a sense of everything that had happened to them since. Inspector Lunge didn't have a very remarkable, he had a remarkable career. Everyone agrees he's a good inspector, but he seems to have gone into himself and his work too much and lost contact with the things around him. Ava, on the other hand, has been in constant contact with people whose lives have been made worse by being around her, or her life has been made worse by being around them. In other words, she hasn't really had any good interactions with people in the last 8 to 10 years. And these characters are in stark contrast to Tenma, who has been trying to be a doctor, a healer, someone who improves people's lives every day of the last 10 years since he met Johan. From there, we go to, we reconnect with Nina, or Anna, depending on what you want to call her. The script will call her different things, depending on which identity she's using. I've decided from this point out, I'm just going to refer to her as Anna. I think that is the more significant identity she has. And I think that it's more important because it is the identity that we connect directly to Johan. Nina is somebody she was for a few years when Johan wasn't around. now that Johann is back in her life, I think Anna is the more appropriate identity to connect to her. So, Anna, we meet as she is pretending to be a prostitute. She's looking for somebody who we just here refer to as the baby. And it doesn't take long to figure out that the baby is a stepping stone for Anna in some way. This leads into the big story arc that takes up probably 9 of the chapters we're going to cover today. Basically, most of the end of this volume. I'm going to go over it very quickly because it doesn't bear too strongly on Johann himself, but rather has a lot to do with people around Johann. And this is how we really learn about our villain through most of this story. Johann is not actually in Monster very much. Like any good horror movie villain, it's what we learn about him and the implication that he is nearby and at work that is really scary. We only see him directly on a few occasions. First, of course, when he's introduced as a young child. Again, when he is reintroduced to Dr. Tenma as the monster that he is. And then again, a few more times as we come to understand what has shaped him and made him think. But by and large, we are going to hear about Tenma from other characters, or not Tenma, hear about Johann from other characters who have experienced the terror of being around him or who have shaped him into the monster he is. And in this case, there is a whole plot about an extremist right-wing group in Germany that is looking to burn down a part of Frankfurt because it is full of Turkish immigrants. They are looking to, preserve the German race because they connect back to the National Socialist Party and so on and so forth. And you can fill in the blanks from that. They're not a particularly interesting group. And I will say, while they are National Socialists and racists for historical reasons, this is not a major part of the story itself. Yeah, they talk down to Tenma because he's an outsider, and they have a dream of racial purity, but the story doesn't dwell on that a whole lot. It is not some kind of read about, racial harmony or anything like that. It's an acknowledgement that this is a major tension in Germany in the time period, which is the late 80s, I believe, maybe early 90s. I forget what the exact year is at this point in the story, but it is a part of Germany that it reflects. And these are a minority party. They are looking to commit acts of terrorism to kind of jumpstart themselves back to success. Tenma and Anna thwart them. But the important part is that they are working with a man named General Wolf. General Wolf, we've already been told, is a major player in shaping Johann. He was part of Kinderheim 511, or at least he's the one who sent Johann there. And we later learned in these installments that he actually found Anna and Johann on the Czech border. So he saved their lives on that occasion, which gives him a connection to Johann very similar to the one Tenma has. And that is pointed out by Wolf himself, who sees Tenma as kind of a kindred spirit. The really important part here is that Johann has been going through and he has been killing off Wolf's family and his friends and anyone who knew him. In fact, as this extremist group in Frankfurt starts to spin up their plan, Johann shows up and he executes most of the leaders. Not because he has a problem with what they're planning to do. Johann hates humanity in general, plans to wipe them all out, not just the people that aren't sufficiently racially pure, all of them. He is very egalitarian in that sense. And what he's trying to do here, he's trying to isolate General Wolf. He's trying to make General Wolf understand where he was and what made him a monster. And that's the really important takeaway from the story, at least as regards Johann. We'll talk about some of the other characters in a minute. But as regards Johann, he's trying to tell Wolf something, and been doing this by killing off everyone General Wolf knows. So when Tenma asks how do you feel about what he's doing? Wolf replies, it's very lonely. And we can take away something important from that as well. That's going to play into this arc that runs through the entire volume. We get some other good moments. Both Anna and Tenma are shown to be trying to kill Johann at this point. That is their goal. They think he's too evil to leave alive, or at least too twisted. And each thinks they have a moral obligation to kill Johann so the other does not have to. This is very interesting. On Tenma's part, it is a dereliction of his duties as a doctor. He has taken an oath to do no harm, and he takes that oath very seriously, as we saw in his introduction at the beginning of the story. But he can't uphold it and leave Johann out there alive. His own cultural sense of ethics says that in saving Johann's life, he has become partially responsible for everything Johann does. So he's in the horns of a dilemma for the entire narrative. And his solution, or at least the one he's pursuing right now, is to kill Johann. And we see in this that Tenma has become a little more comfortable with violence than he has been in the past. Not only does he brandish his gun quite a bit, but he trips, he kicks, he grabs, he throws, he threatens with knives and pens and a number of other sharp implements. A large number of people in this installment of the story. Tenma has become a little bit harder than the guy we saw at the beginning of the story, but not just the beginning of the story, the beginning of this volume. Not so much, if you were to break this down by the original numbering, the beginning of the Takoban size, but in the perfect editions, at the beginning of this volume even, he was a little softer than he is at this juncture. And maybe it's just because he knows that they're trying to burn down huge swaths of Frankfurt, although we see him being pretty violent even before he knows about this plot. We also see that Anna is not as hard as Tenma. She plays very smart. She uses a lot of distractions. We see, actually, Anna's depiction in this is really fantastic because we see a broad array of expressions from her. When she's posing as a prostitute, she puts on a veneer of sex appeal. She has a very sultry expression, but that very quickly lapses when her disguise is seen through. The uncertainty, anger. We do see some confidence. We see determination, a broad array of really impressively acted expressions from Anna in this. And at the end of the story, we even see her exhaustion. We see all this is taking from her. And we see that she has decided that because she failed to kill Johann on the night when Tenma saved his life, she feels like she has to finish the job, so Tenma no longer feels guilty for saving Johann's life. So both of our main characters are actually driven by guilt, but it's a different kind of guilt. Tenma is driven by the guilt of someone who feels responsible for Johann's life. Since he saved this life, he has a cultural responsibility and probably an emotional tie that forces him to look on Johann as someone he should have cared for but didn't. Someone he should have been responsible for but was not. Nina's relationship, or Anna's relationship rather, to Johann is very different. She's the younger sister, or at least so we're given to believe. Johann was always the one in charge. Just based on what we've learned of him so far, he seems to be the one who is always looking out for Anna. Her decision to try and kill Johann is almost like biting the hand that feeds you. And clearly she feels she has this responsibility because she benefited so much from the evil that Johann was doing. So she is coming at this with the same kind of guilt from a very different source. It's very interesting, and it creates very different ways of looking at the problem. Nina has a sense of guilt that is familial, and it's much closer, and she even feels like she has benefited from what Johann has done. On the other hand, Tenma's sense of guilt comes entirely from a feeling of failure. And it gives him a slightly different perspective maybe a more rational one. We'll have to see how these characters develop as the story plays out. But at the end of this story, there is another interesting side chapter that I think kind of encapsulates what the entirety of this volume really is trying to say about how these characters have to look at the question of Johann. What are they going to do? How are they going to act when they meet him again? It turns out that Anna, while she was in Frankfurt, was staying with the owner of an Italian restaurant, Mr. Rosso. And Rosso is a almost grandfatherly character. He's very jovial. He's very charming. He's a bit overweight. He runs his restaurant, and he clearly loves it. Loves food. Um, he is very appropriate with Nina. He makes sure she is safe. He makes sure she is, um, gets home on time. In fact, Nina winds up giving an interview to the police after foiling this plot to burn down Turkish neighborhood, and which is unsurprising. She's found in a warehouse that's rigged and set up to be burned down, and she's just had a fight with a neo-Nazi. So you can understand why she would be in prison. But Mr. Rosso shows up. He vouches for her, and they have a discussion where Nina reveals, interspersed with flashbacks of what time they had spent together, Nina reveals that she is aware of who Mr. Rosso is. He's a former hitman for the mob, and retired, we're told, after a particular job. It's called, the name of this chapter is The Fifth Spoonful of Sugar, which is very interesting. We see Mr. Rosso putting 5 spoons of sugar in his coffee as they talk. And at the end of the story, he confesses that after falling in with the mob and killing all these people, and even losing count of the number of people he has killed, it's when taking aim at a target, and he sees that target put 5 spoonfuls of sugar into his coffee, just like Rosso would, that he has that moment of revelation. It clicks. And the fact that he's about to kill another person, same sensations and hopes and dreams that Rosso himself has, which Rosso had ignored for so long, clicks back in place, and he can't kill anymore. And he asked Nina whether he came with a job or to learn from him. Nina says to learn, and when he asks, well, why didn't you ever talk to me about it, she says, I didn't want to involve you. Nina didn't involve him because she had that simple human connection with Rosso. Rosso learned not to. He remembered what it means to kill a person because he remade that connection. When he parts ways with Nina, the last words of wisdom to her are, killing is easy. All you have to do is forget the taste of sugar. And the point is, if you leave behind those human connections, you will kill easily and without hesitation. Johann, as we have seen through everything we've learned about him so far, has none of those connections. What makes him so dangerous. But we also learn there may be hope for him. Johann leaves a message for Anna and Tenma when he comes through and wipes out the neo-Nazi gang that he's working with. And that message is, help the monster inside of me growing. This can be easily interpreted as multiple personalities or something like that. And in fact, that is the initial interpretation that Tenma has when he hears it. It goes a little bit deeper than that, so don't worry that this is some kind of, gimmicky, we have to save the good personality kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm getting at, but it's not so simple. And it's going to unfold more as time goes on. But for now, that idea combined with the importance of taste of sugar, that human connection, shows us the other path and how it's going to have to be laid down. The path of killing Johann is easy, and it's the path both Anna and Tenma are on at this point in the story. But right now, they are seeing, or at least beginning to see, there may be another approach. That's what's going to really start building to a head in the next volume. But right now, that's where we have to leave it off. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.